If you're in medicine, especially surgery, you've definitely heard the name Burkitt. Burkitt's lymphoma, right? But the story of the man himself, well, that's a whole other thing. It's a masterclass in how a surgeon's unique way of looking at the world, that focus on observation, on practical problem solving, led to not just one, but two absolutely revolutionary medical breakthroughs.
So today, we're going way beyond the textbook. We're going to explore how Denis Burkitt's identity as a surgeon was the real engine behind everything he did. It powered two totally different, monumental discoveries, one in cancer and the other in nutrition. It's an incredible story.
All right, here's how we'll break it down. We're going to follow his journey in 5 parts, and you'll see how his surgical training became this common thread, the thing that connected this whole series of unbelievable breakthroughs.
So, who was Denis Burkitt? Well, his path to becoming a medical legend was anything but a straight line. It actually started with a setback that, let's be honest, would have ended most surgical careers before they even got off the ground.
You know, he started out as a pretty unremarkable student. Then, at just 11 years old, he lost his right eye. Can you imagine, for someone who wants to be a surgeon? But he never let it stop him. It was a profound religious experience that really changed everything, shifting his focus from engineering to medicine with a true sense of mission. And he went from being an indifferent student to graduating second in his class. Just incredible.
But his career truly caught fire when he was sent to Africa. The thing is, the limited resources there didn't hold him back. In fact, they did the opposite. They forced him to ask brilliant questions and innovate out of pure necessity.
Just try to wrap your head around these numbers. This wasn't some high-tech research institute. This was a rural mission hospital. We're talking 100 beds for 300,000 people, spread out over 7,000 square miles. In a place like that, his most powerful tools were his eyes, his hands, and his brain. It was the ultimate proving ground for a practical, problem-solving surgeon.
And this is where you really see the surgeon's mind at work. He wasn't just in the operating room, he was engineering solutions. He was designing cheap, simple prosthetic legs and crutches for his patients. But even more important, he started thinking like a medical detective, mapping out patterns. For example, he noticed that a certain kind of swelling, hydrocele, was common in communities near water, and he started to connect the dots to a waterborne cause.
And he applied that exact same way of thinking, observing, mapping, connecting the dots, to the medical puzzle that would make him famous all over the world.
This was the question that kicked it all off. Back in 1957, a little 5-year-old boy came in with these massive, disfiguring tumors on his jaw. Burkitt quickly figured out this wasn't just a one-off case. He was seeing this horrible condition over and over again, almost always in children.
He tackled this mystery with the discipline of a surgeon. He observed and documented every single case. He dug through archives, looking for historical clues. He reached out to colleagues all across the continent, asking them what they were seeing. And then he mapped the data, literally putting pins on a map to create a visual diagnosis of this epidemic.
And get this, to confirm that his map was accurate, he hopped in an old station wagon and drove 10,000 miles in 10 weeks on what he called a medical safari. He personally visited dozens of hospitals in 9 different countries, collecting samples, verifying cases with his own eyes. It's just a staggering example of boots-on-the-ground clinical observation.
The pace of discovery from there was just incredible. In just 6 years, Burkitt's work went from a simple clinical observation in Uganda all the way to a lab in London. And that's where a virologist named Anthony Epstein used Burkitt's tissue samples to identify the first ever known human cancer-causing virus, the Epstein-Barr virus. I mean, what a landmark moment for oncology.
But his story doesn't stop there. Not even close. In what you could call a remarkable second act, Burkitt applied that same geographic pattern-spotting approach to a totally different set of diseases. Ones he noticed were conspicuously missing in rural Africa.
This was his next huge question. He realized that the diseases filling up hospitals in the West, things like appendicitis, diverticulitis, colon cancer, were practically unheard of in his rural African patients. And as a surgeon trained to spot anomalies, he knew that what wasn't there was just as important as what was. So he started meticulously documenting the differences, and he measured everything, even things like stool weights and bowel transit times. He found these massive, undeniable disparities between populations eating traditional, high-fiber diets and those eating modern, processed Western diet. And this chart just drives the point home. He connected the absence of these diseases to a diet that was incredibly rich in fiber. We're talking multiples of what the average English person was eating.
This became the foundation of his now famous fiber hypothesis, the idea that dietary roughage was a key protective factor against a whole host of modern illnesses.
So, when you pull it all together, what's the lasting lesson from Denis Burkitt's incredible career, especially for surgeons working today? His true legacy isn't just a name attached to a disease, it's a methodology. It's a powerful reminder that before all the high-tech imaging, before the labs, real discovery begins with the surgeon's eye, the courage to ask why, and the tenacity to connect the dots that nobody else is even looking at.
This quote really says it all, doesn't it? Denis Burkitt proved that groundbreaking discovery doesn't always need a prestigious grant or a fancy lab. Sometimes all it takes is an inquisitive mind, a keen eye, and that unique problem-solving perspective that is forged in the life of a surgeon.